I got my coffee right here. It's almost out. Got my jugs of water back there. You know what? Let's just get this started. Stoke Steel, welcome, buddy. How you doing, man? Just in time. We're just getting this started. All right. So, the first episode is about Sasquatch. Now, what is Sasquatch? Sasquatch is described according to video and after video and pictures being analyzed and all this kind of stuff. They've ranged Sasquatch to be between the shortest they've seen is 6'6", and the tallest they have analyzed is 10 foot tall. That's insane. I'm 6'8", 6'9". That's insane. They've analyzed Sasquatch to be between 400 and 1,000 pounds. Now, how they do the weight, I have no idea. I guess they just go kind of like by the width of the body. I'm not 100% sure on that one. And then the footprint, the cornerstone for what makes Sasquatch, what Bigfoot. They estimate from casts they have of footprints that they found. The shortest they found is 12 inches, which is a foot long, and up to 22 inches. Now, to put that into perspective, I wear a size 19 shoe, US. Now, in inches, this bad boy, that's 13 inches. So this is 13 inches, and the biggest footprint they have casted and found was 22 inches and some change. That's two of these. Like, that is crazy. So other sightings, kind of like determining factors of what people have spotted the most when they say they see a Sasquatch, is they describe always the same dark brown, reddish hair. Depending on the area, they have found others, as far as they've reported other sightings of different colors. They found there's sightings of some black hair. There's more of a darker gray, maybe white, and there's even been sightings, less common, of a greenish bluish tint hair on these Sasquatches. Now, where all those ones have resided, the greenish blue one, I honestly couldn't tell you. I could not find exactly where we saw this one here kind of thing. However, when they talk about sightings, a lot of the sightings occur in the Northwest. So we're talking Oregon, Washington, and then Northern California. And then a lot of sightings occur in the Great Lakes region and the Southeast United States. So we're talking like the Carolinas. We have there's a lot of sightings in the Appalachian Mountains kind of thing, like West Virginia, stuff like that. So now, where did the origin of the North American Sasquatch start? Well, the North American Sasquatch started in 1958. Now, in 1958 in Northern California, enjoying some time with our boy Sasquatch streams. Yes, sir. In Northern California, in a place called Buff Creek, there was a bunch of loggers up in this area doing their work, and they all started reporting this sightings of this just giant hairy being, or they described as an ape man walking around and all this kind of stuff. And they also noticed that when this being would appear, things would start to go wrong, as in some of their equipment was being vandalized, and wires would be just completely, they wouldn't be cut, but it's like they were torn from the equipment, and just a bunch of other things that could be uh, dangerous to the loggers. And eventually, this caused the loggers to say, "You know what? We're done. We're not doing this anymore." So a journalist went out there, kind of before they all kind of called quits on the whole operation, and they took this journalist to the site, and they found tracks. Now, this is a cast of the actual track that they found in Bluff Creek in Northern California. This is an actual cast. When the head logger at all, he was kind of suspicious about some things. He didn't really think it was real. He thought some guys were just messing around, all this kind of stuff. They were just spreading stories. Well, as it turns out, as he kept talking to more and more of his guys, he turned to realize that these guys were telling the truth. They truly believed and that they saw this thing and all this kind of stuff. And what led to him asking all these questions was they found this track right here. So when that journalist went out there, he wrote an article back in 1958 in I want to say it was the Humboldt Times. I want to say that's where it was at. And that kind of pushed the narrative and pushed the idea of what we now know as today as Sasquatch, Bigfoot in North America. Now, obviously, there's a lot more subspecies, I guess, if you want to call them, and different areas of the world. Like you have the Yeti and the Himalayas, which will be an episode of Cave Talk, by the way, at some point in time. Not sure when, but we'll get there anyway. So, the first thing I want to talk about, like the first kind of evidence I really want to talk about, is the famous Roger Patterson footage. Now, y'all may not know. Literally was going to ask if they're cousins. So they have. I don't know if they would be considered cousins, but so I'll just go into the fact that a bunch of experts, as far as that deal with apes, monkeys, gorillas, stuff like that, they put them into that category. And a lot of and the reason they put that is because they have a lot of the same characteristics. So like the way they walk, kind of just now obviously not on like all fours, but like just in the way they look, they kind of have like the flatter face, like the nose is kind of flattened down, like the larger lips, the big like the big protruding eyes kind of thing. So they kind of relate them in that way. Now whether or not they're completely related, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of ways like back in the day when all the continents, all that kind of stuff, like we're all connected and all that. I wasn't sure like if they would have been in a central location and like they could have just spread out in their own ways, but in a sense they're related. But I wouldn't say like they're the same like subspecies, I guess. However, back to what really got Sasquatch going in North America is the famous Roger Patterson footage. And like I was saying, you all may not know who I'm talking about. However, there's no doubt in my mind you all have seen the footage. This is just a still image of the footage. This was in Southern California. I cannot remember the exact creek it was located at, but Roger Patterson was on a hunting trip and just so happened to see this big hairy beast walking his way across the creek. And well, I'll just play the footage. Hold on. Give me a second. We're having some technical difficulties. It might have been Bluff Creek too. Trying to get this to play. Give me just a second, guys. You guys have to bear with me, of course. Technical difficulties on the first one. It's going to happen. It sucks, but it's unfortunate. Where would that one be? It may have been. Aha. Well, we watched this. I had it clicked off in the source there. Again, this was in 1967. Let me restart it so we can get the full video. All right. Now, there's a lot of speculation about that film just from certain sources and people who knew Patterson. Stupid phone died. You're all good, Danny. All right. So yeah, there's a lot of speculation just from people who knew Patterson. Now, Patterson, until the day he died in 1972, I want to say it was. He died like 5 years after that footage was captured. He swore, and he kept it to his grave that was real. He never faked it. He swears up and down it wasn't fake. Now, there's been a lot of speculation and a lot of people finding ways that it could have been faked. And at one point, they thought that they proved that it was fake. There's still a lot of speculation about it from a co-partner that was with him during that trip. His name was something Gremlin. I cannot remember his first name. He swears up and down he was not a part of a hoax. He swears that him and Patterson, from my understanding, were split up. They got split up at some point in time, or he stayed behind at the campsite and all that kind of stuff. And he could not say that wasn't a hoax. Now, a lot of people obviously that got the thing going. Oh, it's just somebody in a gorilla suit, stuff like that. And then there's a lot of speculation about just kind of like how it was all filmed, and just kind of looking at it goes with the height and it goes with the length of the arms and all this kind of stuff. They go about like the way that the arms are. I mean, they're stiff. As far as like, if it was someone in a gorilla suit, the hands go down like, I'm pulling it up again. I mean, just look at the length of the arms, okay? I mean, the arms and the hands are almost at the knees. Now, granted, there's some tall people out there. However, the hands go past the knees. There's a lot of speculation that nobody has like long arms like that. So they took that into consideration. They said, okay, if it was a gorilla suit, even if it wasn't, they still could have pulled that off. Well, they took in speculation that the arms would have been flopping around, if it didn't fill the whole suit. And then they take the height into consideration. When they analyzed the footage and all this kind of stuff, they ended up coming up that they speculated this to be anywhere between 6'8" to 7 something. So it would have been a really tall, and Patterson was not that tall. Neither was Gremlin. So, hey Bear, what's up? So, there's no way of really knowing now, especially, that Patterson's dead. And if Gremlin still holds to this day that he wasn't with Patterson when this was filmed, there's no way of knowing, and we're probably never going to know whether or not Patterson really faked this or not. I like to believe he didn't, just because when I look at the pros and cons being like what makes it that this could be real and what makes it that it could be false, both sides have good arguments. However, I truly believe that this one in particular is super hard to fake, with the sense of when they analyzed it, and they, it's really hard to fake, and it's the way that it walks. I mean, and that's where the experts on apes and stuff come into play. Like that, it's really hard to get that kind of. They have a weird way of walking. Like we can kind of walk upright. We don't really walk. I mean, we don't really. I don't know anybody that walks like with their knees bent, kind of like how this one is. I mean, his knees are kind of bent, and that's just not the way humans walk, you know. So yeah, again, one more time, just for quick measure. I mean, just kind of, you see what I'm saying? And just the way, like, that's just way too real. Back in the day, I just don't see a suit being that realistic. I really don't. You know, if you, I mean, you look at Halloween suits back in the day. I mean, that's not. We're talking about people that wore bed sheets for ghosts. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we still do that. Like it's extremely. I wouldn't see that being a realist. It couldn't have been realistic suit. I just at the time and the era, I just don't see a way of them doing that. So I choose to believe it's real. However, that's not my. I want to say this. My goal of this show is to not prove whether things are real or not. My goal isn't, I'm not here to say what you do and don't believe. This is stuff I'm interested in, and I've always taken an interest in it. I like to believe that things like this could exist, and I like to believe also that they could just be myths. I mean, and some of them are. There's no doubt in my mind that some of these are, but there's also no doubt in my mind that some of them could be real. And what I mean by that is, I'm not going to not believe in something until someone can show me proof that it doesn't exist. I mean, we find new species every day. I mean, look at the ocean. Like 7% of our oceans are explored? Like, who knows what's out there? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not a doubt in my mind something like this could exist. But I also take into consideration that until we can prove that this thing exists, and when I mean that, I mean like we bring a body, to the table, and testing is done and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, this is the real deal. Obviously, one, that's not going to be in the systems. I mean, like, if this is an unidentified species, like they're not going to know what it is. And if it gives off all the characteristics of what we know as today as the Bigfoot or Sasquatch, I mean, that's what it's got to be, right? So that's just kind of that's my whole thing about all this. I'm not going to sit here and try and tell you you're right or you're wrong. Just like I'm not going to, I hope, even though I probably will, that people are going to try and falsify my opinions and all this kind of stuff. But that's just going to happen. But anyway, back to it. Now, y'all probably saw it when I was trying to mess around. This is the man himself who made the film, Patterson himself. He continuously, after that footage, he spent the rest of his life just trying to find more evidence. Now, where he got this cast for the foot, I have no idea. I didn't do too much research. As a matter of fact, I think this picture was from his obituary. Like I said, he devoted his life to, after that footage, studying and just trying to prove the existence of the thing he saw, that so many people like called him crazy. They called him, they just completely destroyed this guy with hoax talks and all that kind of stuff. And he spent the rest of his life trying to prove that what he saw is really what he saw. There was no hoax about it. And it's awesome in a way to see people have that much dedication to something, but at the same time it's sad. Anyway, now the next thing I want to talk about is kind of like, as far as sightings go. Now this map I'm about to show you all, this goes up from I want to say 58 when the first deal occurred back in Bluff Creek in California. All the way, this goes up to 2013 was the latest map I could find of sightings. Now, Obviously, that's kind of small. However, you can see a lot of sightings in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, California, some kind of in the Midwest and central states such as Oklahoma, some in Texas, Nevada, Wyoming, a little bit in Montana. And then there's a lot in the East, in the Great Lakes region, in the Southeast United States, Florida, the Carolinas, West Virginia, Arkansas, Missouri, even some up there in Maine, it looks like. Like there's so many sightings that it's like that's what leads people to believe that there's so many subspecies, is because like whenever they describe these things that they're seeing, they're all different. Like when they a lot of your more famous sightings obviously occur in your Northwest areas, mainly California and Oregon. And when they talk about the ones there, it's always the same reddish brown fur, hair, whatever you want to call it. And then whenever you go more into your Appalachian side of things, West Virginia, Carolina, stuff like that, that's when you get into the more darker gray, black hair, kind of stuff like that. That's what leads so many experts to believe that there's so many different just subspecies of this thing, that it's the only it's just what keeps it going. And you look at all the shows that are on TV and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, a lot of them are fake, but at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, like what if there's a lot of what ifs out there, and it's and when it comes to stuff like this, those what ifs are big. But so let's get into some actual sightings as far as pictures and things like that. Now, this first one, this comes from 2001. It was in Pennsylvania, and it came from it's one of the more famous, after the Patterson film, pictures, all that kind of stuff. This is one of the more famous ones as far as up to date. It comes from Pennsylvania. It was from a hunting camp. It got a lot of national news, things like that, and a lot of experts, both game wardens, ape experts, just anything you can go about. They all analyzed this, and they came down to the conclusion that there's really no way to tell what it was. However, if I need to make it bigger, I can. Kind of right there in the middle in front of the tree. Now, a lot of experts say this was a bear. However, I don't have the footage. I couldn't find the footage of it. I've seen the footage. Clear as day, I want to say an hour before this still shot was taken, there's a bunch of bears that happen to come through. And they look nothing like what you see in this picture. Now, that's when a lot of people, it's a bear. A lot of people speculate that it's a bear with just a severe case of mange. And that could be true. However, the size difference is what threw a lot of people off. Now, obviously, like I said, this is just a still shot. I don't have the picture blown up into full proportion, all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you wouldn't see me. However, and it's also just kind of looking at the way that this thing was. I don't know. This is another one for me. Like, I'm going to have several of these that I truly believe are real. For example, like the Patterson one, I believe that one, I truly believe that's a real footage, real sighting, things like that. This one, I'm kind of 50-50 about, because I can see both sides of this, I can see where ape experts say, no, that's not a bear. Even bear experts, whatever you want to call them, they say, no, that's not a bear. Even if it had mange. But I can also see at the side of things where it could be, looking at the fur would be all matted, it'd be missing hair in some pieces, things like in some places, things like that, So there's obviously so many different ways you could go about this. That's why this one I'm really 50-50 about. Like I said, it got a lot of national news, and what's made it really one of the more famous pictures out there. Baby Squatch, very possible. It's possible. But let's go on to the next one. However, before I get there, I want to say this. in Spokane, Washington, just outside of Spokane, Washington, in the 1840s. I cannot remember the name of the tribe. There was a Native American tribe that lives kind of near that area back in the 1840s. Interviews and stuff with the tribe, they speak of legends of just giants, not Sasquatches. They all they say is stories of giants from their ancestors and so on. And some of these Native Americans, they see these beings as helpful, as some of them even saw them as a god in some ways. However, in some of those interviews, some of the other tribes described them as demons. They brought sickness to the areas. They were a bad omen. That's another thing that really gets my speculation going on things, is like when we talk about people that live that, they live in these reservations and things like that, they live off the land. They, especially back then, like, I trust those people. That's the life they live. And they live off the land. They're hunting. They're doing all that kind of stuff, And a lot of that stuff, especially whenever you get like the cave drawings and just drawings in general on trees or stuff like that, like, they're not just coming up with that. Something had to have inspired that drawing to happen. Something had to have inspired those stories to be real, which is another reason why I never say things don't exist until it's proven to me that they don't exist. Which, again, how are you going to prove something doesn't exist? There's always going to be hoaxes out there. There's always going to be, you know what I'm saying? There's hoaxes in every folklore, every legend out there. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to those here in a few. That's going to be one of the last things we talk about. There's hoaxes everywhere. But how can we say it's not real? Regardless, we can't prove that it's real, like I said, until we get 100% evidence. And like I said, it's going to come down to a body has to be at the table. That's how much evidence we're going to have to finally prove that a Sasquatch, Bigfoot, anything exists. And that may happen soon. That may never happen. But that's my way of looking at things. And with the Native Americans, I trust them a lot. Now, this next picture I'm going to show comes from the FBI. Now, this was released by the FBI after a man started. I cannot remember the full story of why he started pestering the FBI. But he started saying things like, I think they were on his land and they were collecting samples. And in this guy's letter to the FBI in 1976, he claimed that they found blood samples and they even had flesh of this creature that kept coming through this guy's land. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. And they said, the FBI came out and said that they had hair samples, and it was the first time they had ever had a hair sample from anything that they could not identify. There was nothing in the system. Now, obviously, the FBI doesn't deal with animals a lot, but still, even them sending it out to mammal experts, I don't know what you call them, they couldn't identify what hair this was. There was nothing in the systems. And this is the picture that the FBI took. I don't know. This is kind of one of those things, like, this one seems fake to me, but I don't know. Because I've never seen one, but here it is. This is going to be a little bit more bigger. As you can see there on the right side, in between the two trees there, You can kind of see, the body. Obviously, you can see the body. Then you can almost see a clear as day picture of the face. Again, this is where I have an issue with this. When I look at this picture and I go and I look at the Patterson film, this to me looks like it's a suit. It doesn't look real. When I look at those two things with the Patterson film, I mean, there was more distinct features. Like, I mean, it looked like pure. I mean, it just didn't look deformed and such as like the muscles kind of seemed like they were in the right places. I mean, it just looked more fuller, and it didn't look like somebody in a saggy suit. This to me, like I said, that's kind of what it looks like to me. It's, when you look at the facial features too, it doesn't look like anything that a lot of people describe. And what I mean by that is, like I was saying, when a lot of people describe these Bigfoot Sasquatch sightings, they always describe the mush kind of face, like the nose, like it's not kind of outward, it's more mushed in there. The big lips, the eyes being the way they are, more protruding kind of way. This looks like, honestly, this looks like somebody in the suit. They just threw some hair on a dude's face, and that's just kind of how they went with it. And when you look at even looking at the size, like you look at the ground, then you look at the tree there. I mean, that looks like somebody that's my height, if not a little bit shorter. Like the size just doesn't look the same, and like looking at the camera angle and all that kind of stuff, like it doesn't look to be that much taller than the camera. To me, this one's fake. This came from, again, it said that this picture came from the FBI. Obviously, it's a real picture. Obviously, it was a real incident that occurred. However, this picture to me is fake. Now, I cannot prove, nor can I deny, that the man pestering the FBI, really had something going across his land and all that all the time that he couldn't explain. And I can't deny that the FBI really wasn't there, and they do or do not have samples of flesh, blood, whatever you want to call it. I do know that there are samples of these things out there now. That's been proven, and there's been several samples proven of unidentified creatures that they just cannot figure out what the hell it is. And it's one of those things, like, I can't prove that this picture is real, because I don't think it is. But I also can't prove that what this guy was pestering the FBI about really didn't happen. Now, like I said, there are plenty of samples out there nowadays saying that these things, not saying that they exist, but from where they got them, from the sightings that happened just before they got the samples of what they're saying, and these samples coming back unidentifiable, like it's another one of those things. Like, I mean, like, there's got to be some truth to it. So it's just really interesting stuff to when you really get down and you start researching these things and you start looking at it. Like, it's crazy the proof that there is that's out there. There's a lot of proof out there showing that these things exist. However, again, there's a lot of proof out there because people who are doing all these hoaxes and all that kind of stuff that prove that they don't exist. If you want my honest opinion, I believe they exist. But I also am not so caught up in it, like I said, to believe that if there was a way they could prove that it didn't exist, I would believe that it didn't exist. There's not enough evidence out there to show me that it doesn't exist, but however, there's enough evidence out there to show that scientifically this thing could exist. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and the next thing of footage here comes from Marble Mountain in Northern California. A lot of these are going to come from California, with the exception of the Pennsylvania, with the bear story. This happened in 2001. Again, at Marble Mountain in Northern California. Where exactly that's at, I have no idea. I've never been to California. However, before I get into the footage itself, I want to say this is when I trimmed it down, I don't get a lot of I got the more important things. However, I want to say this: the footage is zoomed in at this point. From where I have where I trimmed it, the footage is zoomed in. From where the people were at, it was a youth group, by the way. From where the people were at into where they saw this thing was over 750 yards. They didn't give me the exact distance, but it was over 750 yards. Now, the reason I say that is this. The footage looks as though it could just be a guy walking down. It really does. But it's 750 yards away. Even with the zoom, the dude's going to be he's going to be tiny. With the zoom at the foot, this is in 2001. The cameras were starting to come around, but they weren't the best. Let's be honest there. Even with the zoom in, a regular man is going to look kind of small from that distance. The thing that they saw in this video, walking down the mountainside, is huge. Okay? An example, because you can see it even without the zoom. And like I said, it does look like it could just be a guy, but then you really got to look at the size kind of things of it. Let's go ahead and get that going.
To the right of him. It's walking that way. Trees. Okay. See that King's Castle? Yeah.
Is that kind of little skinny thing?
That little thing. Yeah. On the right side of the tree.
Kind of small, but this is a far way away.
I don't see nothing. Seriously.
On the ridge.
On the ridge?
Right on the ridge.
Almost to those trees.
He's coming down this way. See the patch of snow in the middle there? There's 3 patches of snow up there. See the one right?
Okay. Now, again, it does look like a guy. It looks like someone that could just be wearing a backpack and they're walking down. But again, when you look at, let's go back to that. I want to watch both. I want to watch that one more time, and I want to watch the Patterson film. We're going to watch the Patterson film first. Look at the back. Okay. Kind of hunched. You see what I'm saying? When it turns and looks, it has a hunchback. It has a pretty noticeable hunchback. Now, when we go and we look at this one, look at the back.
To the right of him. It's walking that way. Trees. Okay. See that King's Castle?
See what I'm saying? Notice where it could be a backpack. However, looking at the Patterson
on the right
film,
side of the tree.
Kind of small,
it
but
could be a hunchback. You know.
I don't see nothing.
And like I said, this is over 750 yards away from the spot they filmed this at.
He's coming down this way. See the patch of snow in the
That
middle
is a
there? There's 3
massive
patches of
being.
snow up there.
I mean, if this was today, I could understand with the way cameras have evolved and all that kind of stuff. You could probably even zoom in more, and honestly, with some of these cameras, I bet you could like identify it. Like, hey, that's freaking Bob from 2 blocks down, just walking down the mountain. But in 2001, the cameras weren't like that. So again, whatever this thing was, it was big. And to further along with the video continues. This thing just keeps walking down until they eventually it just stops. I don't know why it stops, but it does. He just keeps walking Again, that's kind of one of those, I see both sides of it. I'm not going to say it was Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, but I'm also not going to say it was a person. I don't know. Again, the theme was big. And there's, again, no way of knowing what it was. The only people that could probably tell you for sure what it was that day are the people that filmed that footage right there. And I guarantee you, if they put it down as a Bigfoot sighting, that's what they're going to call it as. And if it was a Bigfoot sighting, however, it would have been the longest footage of a sighting. That film, the film itself was 6 minutes long. However, from where they saw this thing to end point was over 3 minutes long. It's the longest amount of time a sighting has been recorded. A lot of those are at most a minute long before they run away. This was over 3 minutes long from the time they saw it to the time the footage ended. If it was really a Bigfoot, that's insane. Just because, again, those sightings usually don't last that long. It's blurry, 15 seconds to a minute. Again, one of those, we're never going to know what it was. But I choose to believe what I believe. And I hope you all agree with me. But, now, the next set of footage I want to show you all is, again, before I show it, it's one of the most controversial videos out there, because if this is real, again, a lot of experts in the film world show it wasn't edited. There's a lot of people say that it was just, obviously, again, guy in a suit, all this kind of stuff. It was a guy with a robot. I'll get to why I say that here in just a second. However, the reason why it is so controversial, because if this is real, it is the clearest video since that Patterson footage. And it's honestly insane. Where it took place, it was an anonymous poster. First off, they call this the Independence Day Bigfoot. Again, nobody knows where it was taken. All we know is it is the clearest video proof of a Sasquatch. Now, it leads up to, it's a female Bigfoot. It pops up. It goes down. It disappears for a second. It pops back up. And it seems to be carrying what is, as Danny called it, baby Squatch. Let's just watch it. Now, again, why it's so controversial. If it's real, it is the clearest video proof that Sasquatches or Bigfoots, whatever you want to call them, exist. Now, here's why. This is where I'm getting to the robot comment. A lot of people say that it's just a guy in either a suit or a big coat, and when he picks up the thing, it's just like a bag of, or it's just either like a animatronic, like baby doll kind of thing, dressed up as that, which I've seen, but the way the I mean, you all saw it. I don't know if you saw it or not, but whenever you actually go and you look at the thing, the way this baby Sasquatch starts moving, it looks like very realistic movement. You want to make it a bigger thing? Okay, here. By the way, this comes from NVTV from YouTube. I couldn't find just the original footage. This is the original footage, but with the mark there. As you see, it almost like it takes notice that the filmer's there. And again, like, I can see where people are coming from, but then I go back and I look at this. Maybe. Give it a second, folks. Regardless if it plays or not, I don't know. I look at the Patterson film, and the Sasquatch in the Patterson film was said to be a female, just by characteristics of it. You know, they look at things like the breast and stuff like that, like it looks to be a female. When I look at this one, I kind of look, the build looks the same. I was watching the little squatch and it moves its head around like cautiously. Exactly. That's where the speculation comes from. It's just a robot, but it also, I mean, like the way it moves, I mean, it's hard to tell. Like I said, I don't know if this is real or not. But I'm not even like 50-50 on it. It's one of those like I really don't know. Again, if it's real, the clearest proof that Sasquatch exists, the clearest video out there since the Patterson film. But again, so I don't know why that's doing that. Hopefully that doesn't. You know what? Just in case, I am going to go ahead and mute the Patterson film one if it's not already muted. It might already be muted. Yes, it's already muted. It moved like it was scared. Yeah. Because like again, like whenever the bigger one pops up again, it seems to take notice of the videoer. You know, it so I don't know. Sketchy, but I don't think it's robotic. Yeah. At most, if it is fake, it's a kid. Just a kid in a suit. Or you know what I'm saying? Or a kid in a bigger coat. A darker kind of coat. Now, again, it was another one of those. They had a lot of opinions on it from experts and things like that. It's another one of those. It's really hard to tell whether... A lot of people say you can see a zipper at one point in the video. I could never find it. I mean, that's not the full video. I mean, it pretty much is, but there's like a one last little part of it just walking further down. A lot of people say like you can see a zipper of the suit. I personally like looking at it. I could never find it. Again, just look up Independence Day Bigfoot on YouTube and you're gonna find it. I could never see a zipper. But I'm gonna delete that just so it doesn't pop up, and actually I'm gonna go ahead and re-add the Pat film, just so that way it's there. Give me a second while I add this to the stream deck here, guys. Okay. Anyway, you know what? We'll do next. We're just gonna go on to the next one. Okay. The next one, and the last thing to film that I have is honestly the first part. I can see where it can be fake, but the second video of the same guy in the same area, the same location, not the same like area of the location, but the same location. It takes place in Provo Canyon. I think that's how you pronounce it, in Utah. Now, this took place in 2012, and before I show the video, I want to get into some of the traits that all these Bigfoot Sasquatches have, and that's kind of like their warnings. A lot of footage of these always has the same thing. It's either like tree knocking, and what I mean by that is it's like someone is taking a giant piece of bark and slamming it against a tree, making the knocking sound. And a lot of that, whenever they have speculations of, I don't even want to say speculations, a lot of these videos that have been proven not to be faked, but also not to be real, you know, that always seems to happen before something shows up. You know, it's a warning. And also, a big characteristic of these Sasquatches is rock throwing. I wish I would have found it. I could not find the footage. There is real footage out there from Oregon, in the Oregon woods, and it's from a gentleman. I cannot remember his name, but it's supposedly real footage of Bigfoot, and it looks pretty. If it was, it's a pretty well done. It's a pretty well done suit. If it's fake, but it throws rocks. And in this video, the first video, it's of a supposed Bigfoot walking down the hillside. It crouches down a little bit, looks at the guy, and you see him pick up a rock and throw it. Now, I'm just go. Hold on, I'll just show it to you. If it'll pop up. My stream deck is acting kind of weird, so it may not pop up. That will be really sad, actually. Oh, there it is. Okay, then the rock gets thrown. Like I said, hold on. It's walking down, stops, it crouches, kind of looking at him. You can hear the panic in the guy's voice. To me, it sounds real. Dude is either not faking it, or he's a really good actor. Could be either or. I mean, the emotion of it all it sounds pretty real. Another one of those, I don't know. The next one is from the same guy, and this is the one that really caught my attention. And just looking at the size of this thing, it was the dude shows raw emotion, and you can tell the dude is scared shitless. He's filming this thing, you can see it through the trees, and then this thing stands up and starts walking towards him. This thing is huge, and this is like probably 20 yards away, if that. At first you're thinking, oh, it's just a bear. Let's go. Again, that wasn't a bear. And the only only thing I can put into perspective in a way of like, or I can like compare it to would be the mountain on the Game of Thrones. This thing is just absolutely massive as far as how wide it is. I mean, I'm gonna watch it again, honestly.
Yeah, we probably should be too close to it. Huh? Cool though. Let's go.
Okay. So that the first part of that seemed fake. I don't know. It didn't look very. The emotion seems authentic. However, the Sasquatch, I don't know. It just doesn't seem very authentic to me. That one definitely seems like a fake. However, the second one, which is the only, then the second footage is the only reason there's a part of me that believes the first one. And it's a small part, but the second one looks way too real. The way he is, again, scared shitless. The size of this thing from just the short distance it is from him, and it starts walking towards him. I mean, that is, I don't know. That looks real to me. That doesn't seem fake. So, which brings me to my final talking point of what I at least have written down, which are the hoaxes. Now, as I said, there's a lot of hoaxes out there, which is why it's so hard to believe these things. And just a couple of the bigger ones I found. In 1985, in Enola, Pennsylvania, the residents of this town were frightened of this thing they kept seeing at night. They would always see it along the sides of the roads. It was just a constant thing. I think they said it happened all the time. Now, they always described it as a big, hairy thing on the side of the road all the time that would be walking by, all this kind of stuff. Now, after about 6 months of these sightings and cops sitting there, they could never figure it out. The cops finally found a 24-year-old man dressed in an ape suit on the side of the road where they always said they saw this thing, perfectly sitting and standing and walking, whereas cars would drive by, the headlights would hit him and they would see him. It is, I don't want to say it's one of the more famous hoaxes, however, it's one of the more, I would say, funny. It's kind of, it's really humorous how he did it, and it's in a way it's pretty funny how it makes. I couldn't find like the suit. Obviously, it was just a little newspaper thing. So it makes me wonder how like realistic the suit could have been, or what he did to make him look so real. But that was one of the more funnier ones I found. One of the more recent ones, I have more recent ones, but a more recent one. In 2008, there was, and this one got national news. It was called the Bigfoot in the Freezer. There was a man who claimed, I'm sorry. There was a group of, it was two guys that claimed they had killed Bigfoot, and they had his body in a freezer. When scientists claimed to see proof, they took a picture of what was an ape in a freezer, or a bloody ape in a freezer, and sent it to him. They're like, oh, well, I mean, that looks real. It's not no ape we've ever seen. It was kind of deformed a little bit, all this and all that kind of stuff. And finally, when scientists tracked down the two, they demanded to see the Bigfoot in the freezer, because they ended up The two guys ended up selling the Bigfoot in the freezer for over $1 million. And the guy who bought it sent it to scientists, and and all it was a gorilla suit filled with roadkill. How do you feel being the guy that bought that? Thinking it was really Bigfoot, and that's what all it was roadkill and a gorilla suit. Yeah, that one was. I remember that. Yeah, exactly. That one made news. That was funny. In 2012, it was called the Run Over Bigfoot. A Montana man was hit and killed just south of Kalispell, Montana, faking a Bigfoot sighting. He was in a suit. He would be walking across the road just trying to scare tourists, all this kind of stuff. Well, someone decided to go Harry and the Hendersons on him and hit the guy and killed him. That happened in 2012. The guy had it coming. I mean, I don't want to say that he had dying coming, but if you're gonna walk across I don't know if any of y'all have ever been to Montana, especially Kalispell. Kalispell is a pretty popular place as far as tourist and summer vacation goes. That was bound to happen at some point. Okay. The last hoax I have written down, like I said, there's hundreds, there's thousands, I don't know how many, but there's a lot of hoaxes out there. This was from 2014, and it was simply titled Hank. Yeah, not our Hank, but Hank. A man claimed that he killed Bigfoot, and he went on a tour with the body, and it was an exact replica of what people claim Bigfoot is. I mean, it looked real. And he would go on tour, and he was charging people to see the Bigfoot, the dead Bigfoot. Well, some scientists dressed as tourists went in there, and while this man wasn't looking, decided, let's see what this really is. All this was a body made of latex, foam, and the hair was camel hair. That's all it was. And this dude made bank charging people to see this Bigfoot. Not thinking people wouldn't start speculating and people wouldn't eventually show up to prove this but wrong. So like I said, there's a lot of hoaxes out there, but there's a lot of footage out there that can't really be say that this thing doesn't exist. So